I'm going to read about 5 minutes from the last chapter of The Great Gatsby. Bear with me, I have a cold. After 2 years, I remember the rest of that day, and that night, and the next day, only as an endless drill of police and photographers and newspapermen in and out of Gatsby's front door. A rope stretched across the main gate, and a policeman by it kept out the curious, but little boys soon discovered that they could enter through my yard, and there were always a few of them clustered open-mouthed about the pool. Someone with positive manners, perhaps a detective, used the expression madman as he bent over Wilson's body that afternoon, and the adventitious authority of his voice set the key for the newspaper's report next morning. Most of those reports were a nightmare, grotesque, circumstantial, eager, and untrue. When my callous testimony at the inquest brought to light Wilson's suspicion of his wife, I thought the whole tale would shortly be served up in a racy pasquinade. But Catherine, who might have said anything, didn't say a word. She showed a surprising amount of character about it, too. Looked at the coroner with determined eyes under that corrected brows of hers, and swore that her sister had never seen Gatsby, that her sister was completely happy with her husband, that her sister had been into no mischief whatever. She convinced herself of it, and cried into her handkerchief as if the very suggestion was more than she could endure. So Wilson was reduced to a man deranged by grief, in order that the case might remain in its simplest form, and it rested there. But all this part of it seemed remote and unessential. I felt myself on Gatsby's side, and alone. From the moment I telephoned news of the catastrophe to West Side Village, every surmise about him, and every practical question was referred to me. At first I was surprised and confused. Then as he lay in his house, and didn't move or breathe or speak, hour upon hour, it grew upon me that I was responsible, because no one else was interested. I mean, with that intense personal interest to which everyone has some vague right at the end. I called up Daisy half an hour after we found him, called her instinctively and without hesitation, and she and Tom had gone away early that afternoon and taken baggage with them. Left no address? No. Say when they be back? No. Any idea where they are? How could I reach them? I don't know. Can't say. I wanted to get somebody for him. I wanted to go into the room where he lay and reassure him. I'll get somebody for you, Gatsby. Don't worry. Just trust me. I'll get somebody for you. Meyer Wolfsheim's name wasn't in the phone book. The butler gave me his office address on Broadway, and I called information. But by the time I had the number, it was long after 5, and no one answered the phone. Will you ring again? I've rung them 3 times. It's very important. Sorry, I'm afraid no one's there. I went back to the drawing room and thought for an instant that they were chance visitors, all these official people who suddenly filed in. But as they drew back the sheet and looked at Gatsby with unmoved eyes, his protest continued in my brain. Look here, old sport. You've got to get somebody for me. You've got to go try hard. I can't get through this alone. Someone started to ask me questions, but I broke away and going upstairs, looked hastily through the unlocked parts of his desk. He'd never told me definitely that his parents were dead. But there was nothing, only the picture of Dan Cody, a token of forgotten violence, staring down from the wall. Next morning, I sent the butler to New York with a letter to Wolfsheim, which asked for information and urged him to come out on the next train. That request seemed superfluous when I wrote it. I was sure he'd start when he saw the newspapers, just as I thought there'd be a wire from Daisy before noon. But neither a wire nor Mr. Wolfsheim arrived. No one arrived, except more police, and photographers, and newspapermen. When the butler brought back Wolfsheim's answer, I began to have a feeling of defiance, of scornful solidarity between Gatsby and me against them all. Dear Mr. Carraway, this had been one of the most terrible shocks of my life. I hardly can believe it that it's all true. Such a mad act as the man did should make us all think. I cannot come down now, as I am tied up in some very important business. It cannot get mixed up in this thing now. If there is anything I can do, a little later, let me know in a letter by Edgar. I hardly know I am when I hear about a thing like this, and I'm completely knocked down and out. Yours truly, Meyer Wolfsheim. And then hasty addenda beneath. Let me know about the funeral, etc. Do not know his family at all. In the passage that I just read, Nick reflects on everything that happened to Gatsby after his death. Gatsby was a man who started with little and worked his way to the top. He lived in a big house across the bay of his one true love, Daisy. During the summer, he had many parties at his house, and tons of people from all over attended them, whether they had been invited or not. However, Jay Gatsby hardly attended his own parties. Few knew who he was, and those who didn't created rumors and lies about who he was. Maybe this is why Nick was the only one who was there for Gatsby when he died. Nick was the only real person that knew him, other than his friend Meyer Wolfsheim, who in the end couldn't even be there when he died. Many people did come by the house, but those were only the ones who were curious and wanted to catch a glimpse of what had happened. I think Gatsby's death signifies that even though many people may know your name, if you don't take the time to stop and get to know those along the way, and you isolate yourself, like he didn't attend his own parties, instead he stayed in the house and observed it. In the end, you'll end up being alone, and dying alone in his case. Gatsby did a lot to be established as a wealthy man, and marry his one true love. Even though he tried to be rich just for her, in the end, he died alone without her. I think the author, Scott Fitzgerald, did this to show that even though you may work as hard as you want to get something you want, in the end, if you don't stop and take the time to get to know those around you and get to know those who are helping you out, you'll die alone. It's a shame that he was killed for murder that he didn't even commit, just when he started to change, just when he started to make friends. You know, he had just changed and finally reached out to his neighbor, Nick, and they had become friends and they'd been close, which is why he wasn't completely alone, which is why Nick was still there for his death and to keep his name going on, because Nick was the only one who in the end knew the truth about Gatsby. It also shows that some people, especially back in this era, like Daisy, his love, and Daisy's husband, in that era, they were rich because of their parents. They had money handed to them, and they always got what they want. And so they'll do what they have to do. In Daisy's husband's case, Tom, he lied even if it caused Gatsby's death. He lied and said Gatsby had killed the girl he was having an affair with, when that was not the case, and it resulted in Gatsby dying, and dying alone. So I think the moral of this that the author was trying to show, and that what I got from reading this and why I liked it, is because people all over work as hard as they want to get what they want, but if they don't take the time to stop and get to know the people who are helping them along the way, or the people who live next door to them, or the people who attend their parties, they'll end up dying alone without the one they loved and defeated. And that's how Jay Gatsby died. Thank you.